How you? See this. Okay. Up in the balcony, how y'all doing up there? We got multitudes up in the balcony today. So, all right. All right, good to see you up there. Okay. Well, we'll have Brother Ken come. We'll take an offering this morning. As I was on the bus route this morning, I passed 5 churches and 4 of them were closed. 4 out of 5. So it's a shame, but just pray for our nation, pray for our church. I know you've made announcements, Brother Mike. Okay. Just want to make a little note about the special Christmas party we're having. I want to make sure my sister-in-law knows this. Okay, it says, please join us for some flannel, flapjacks, and favorites. And you normally eat flapjacks for what, breakfast? But don't wear your flannel pajamas. I mean, you can wear flannel, wear some flannel shirts, but no flannel pajamas, please. Anyway, it's going to be a good time. And so I think there's supposed to be a sign up back there. If it's not there today, it'll be there tonight or next Sunday. Make sure you sign up and you'll have a good time. It's don't let that date fool you. It's on December 16th, which is a Wednesday night. But remember, this next Wednesday we meet, but then for the next 4 Wednesdays we'll be, actually the next 4 weeks we'll be meeting on Thursday night. The 13th will be, 13th I think is the choir special, and then we have the school special, and then we have Christmas Eve, and then we have New Year's Eve on Thursday. So keep that in mind and join all those activities. And last week I was down in Clarksville, Tennessee for a church was having a special mission emphasis Sunday, and so I was real pleased to be there. Nice little church down there. A young man that was pastoring that church was saved at a youth camp that we hosted probably about maybe 10 or 12 years ago down at Camp Chautauqua, and he got saved at that camp and then was called to preach. He was out of Georgia, and so he's a nice young man. He and his wife doing a good job down in Clarksville. All right, let's ask God to bless in our offering, and have a lady gave me her offering to put in today, so we'll do that as well. Lord, thank you today for your goodness to us and your blessings upon us. Thank you for this Thanksgiving celebration, the opportunity we've had to be with family these last few days. Pray now your blessings upon this offering as we worship you with it in Christ's name. Amen. All right, here we go. While we're doing that, we're going to get get our... If you have your outline from Hosea, it was given a couple weeks ago. I'm assuming that most of you don't, so we're going to have you give you another outline here. All right. Okay. Yeah, we got. Okay, everybody. There's 2 sheets, so you need 2 sheets on the book of Hosea, and this takes you through the first 5 chapters, and so. Here you go. Okay. All right. Did you get one, Brother Julie?
I think I got the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you got the same one. Yes, sir. Okay, Brother Mike's got his all highlighted. He's all ready.
Can't read without highlighting.
There you go. All right. Well, the book of Hosea, 14 chapters. And so we're going to go through the first 5, and then next week we will go through the rest of the chapter, the rest of the book of Hosea, as we take a bird's eye view of the Old Testament. Now, this bird's eye view has become more of a little more than a bird's eye view, more than I thought it intended it to be in some ways, but it's been a blessing to kind of pull over and stop, spend a little more time than I thought. It's not a verse-by-verse study, but it is certainly an overview of each chapter. So when we're finished, when we get through the book of Malachi, which will be a few months away, we'll be finished with the Old Testament, and you'll be able to have somewhat of an overview of each chapter. Although we did not do the entire book of Psalms, we did a nice study on the book of Psalms and Proverbs, but not a chapter by chapter or on the book of Proverbs or Psalms. But the others we've tried to do every chapter and give a little outline on that. So the word of the Lord that came unto Hosea. I like what it starts, the word of the Lord that came to Hosea. Now just because we went over and started this 2 weeks ago, let's just refresh our memory a little bit. So Hosea is, he's like the prophet Jeremiah. He had a weighty message and he had a broken heart. And it's a message that he's delivering because of the unfaithfulness of Israel. And remember, normally in the scriptures, when the Old Testament, you hear the word Israel, it's talking about the 10 northern tribes. Their capital is Samaria. And then when it talks about the 2 southern tribes, it normally refers to them as Judah. So I'll not read that entire front introduction. We went over that a little bit. But it's very interesting to consider kind of an overview of that. And then I'll give you a brief outline there in the bottom there of the 14 chapters. If you go down to number 11 on the introductory background, I do want to correct one thing. I don't know that I had it corrected. It says, Hosea foretold the downfall of the northern kingdom, and it says of Judah. But cross that word Judah and put Israel or Samaria there. That would be correct. You know, as you're doing this study, and I do this when I study and I write down notes by hand, I give it to my secretary, she types it out. And it's not her error, it's mine. You know, as you study this and sometimes, you know, just I didn't catch that when I first wrote it, but as I was restudying that, I understood, I knew that should have been the northern kingdom is Israel or Samaria and not Judah. So flip over on the back side of the first one. Let's look at chapter 1. And I don't know the best way to study this, to be able to get through 5 chapters in about 20 minutes or 25 minutes. I think the best we can do is I'm going to read this summary that I wrote down as I read. And what I do, I would read the chapter, and you know, any other books that I had or helps that I could try to glean from, and then I would write in my own handwriting what I felt this was saying, and Remember, the Bible you have in your hand is infallible. The notes you have in your hand are far from infallible. So I hope they're accurate, but I would understand that they're not totally accurate, I would think. Not that I want them not to be. But let's just look at chapter 1. Okay? Remember Hosea. Here's how it starts off in chapter number 1. In chapter number 1, verse 2, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go take unto thee a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord." Now this whoredom probably had a double meaning there. Not only had were they worshiping false gods, which that would be a type of whoredom for the people of God, but they also they were sexual perversion had even entered into their worship, and that's how wicked it had become as they had worshipped Baal. And so I put on this chapter, imagine the surprise of Hosea the prophet that God would speak directly to him, number one. And the word of the Lord came to Hosea. Can you imagine that? But he was startled to hear the command that was given to him, "Go take unto thee a wife of whoredoms, and the children of whoredoms, for the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord." Wow. Then in verse 3 it says, Hosea, which his name means salvation, immediately obeys the Lord's command, and quickly, now we don't know how quickly was. Remember, from one verse to another in the Bible could be months, sometimes years or days. But it was he went immediately to obey that command. He marries a woman by the name of Gomer. Her name means heat, and she bears him a son named Jezreel. Now, this name, Bible names mean a lot, and Jezreel, that was given to this first son, was a prophecy from the Lord that one day rebellious Israel, that's the northern tribes, would meet its defeat on the battlefield of Jezreel. Now, Jezreel, in the Scriptures, it goes by other names, just like the Sea of Galilee is the Sea of Gennesaret and Sea of Tiberias. Well, this valley of Jezreel is also known as the Valley of Megiddo. And if you'll remember, the Battle of Armageddon will also be fought in that Valley of Megiddo. Many other battles were fought there. It's kind of a famous battleground. So God will, verses 4 and 5 tell us that God will scatter the 10 tribes among the nations. Hosea loved his wife, but she unfortunately returned to her old ways. If you remember last time, I think we went through this a little bit. I just put a little question mark in my own outline. I kind of questioned when I put down myself. I don't know that we could say that Gomer was a harlot when she was married, but she became a harlot. At least we know that. But to say that she was a harlot in the beginning may be stretching it. But when I first wrote it, that's what I thought it was saying. This was a prophecy that God would not spare mercy. Well, after that it says she had 2 children of immorality. So he marries this lady. They immediately have a child. But then she has 2 other children out of wedlock. One was Lo-ruhamah, which means unloved or unpitied. That's in verse 6. And then they had a little boy named Lo-ammi, which means no kin of mine or not of my people. So this was a prophecy that God would not spare mercy upon Israel for their idolatry, nor would he claim fellowship with his rebellious people. That's verses 7 through 9. Hosea was also given the word of prophecy that God would one day forgive, cleanse, and restore the tribes of Jacob to be one people, worshiping him again. So even though God corrects his children, Israel here would be some typology of believers. God would chasten believers for their unfaithfulness unto him, as he has chastened the nation of Israel. But yet he has not forsaken them, nor will he forsake them. And there will come a day, as we know, from the book of Revelation, that at the end of the tribulation, that God will, Israel will recognize Jesus to be as their Messiah, and their love affair, they will see him, and it says a nation will be born in a day. Okay, so that takes us into chapter 2. Hosea took care of the children of whoredom. So even though they were not his children, but now the names are changed, and he loves these children. He was not their father, but he was really, I guess you would call, their stepfather, and he loved these. And the name was changed. It was called Ami, I should say, which means mine, and Ruhamah, which means pitied one. So he had compassion on them. So here we have Hosea being like our Savior, having compassion upon these children that were not his own. He encourages them, he uses these children, or not uses them, but encourages them to talk to their mother to change from her idolatrous ways and turn from her wickedness. But yet Gomer leaves the family, leaves Hosea with 2 children, actually 3 children, one that they had, and then 2 that she had by whoredom. And she leaves, and she is trying to find some satisfaction in the world. And like folks who try to go into the world and find happiness and live in the world, like the prodigal son who went into the world, there's only pleasure in sin for a season. There is pleasure in sin, but it's only for a season. And so she went in looking for this contentment and satisfaction, but she couldn't find it. And so finally, she gives up her pursuit of idolatry, which also led her into adultery, and she returns home to her husband. So I put in the outline that the prodigal wife returns as the prodigal nation will one day return to the Lord after the great tribulation. So remember, God's speaking through Hosea, through his wife, and she is a type of God is married to Israel, and Israel, the wife of God, has become unfaithful to him, as Hosea's wife has become unfaithful to him. But God has not given up on his wife, and Hosea did not give up on his wife. So continue there in chapter 2, in the middle of that paragraph. Hosea had looked after Gomer in her days of rebellion without her knowledge, just like God still looks after us in our rebellion. God extends grace and mercy to us, not because we deserve it, because we need it. Men still take credit for the good things God gives them. So isn't that just like mankind? Sometimes we think that we've had good luck, or we've had, we've done a good job in something and we've been blessed. But, every good and perfect gift for the child of God comes from above. The Lord gives and the Lord can take away when there's no repentance. Verse number 10, Hosea will remove his blessings from Gomer to seek her return to him, just as Jesus many times removes blessings from us to seek our return. So, God does bless, but sometimes when the blessings stop, it could be a time to look to see if there's some problem that's going on in our life. Gomer has forsaken Hosea for strange lovers, and Israel had forsaken God for Baal. So that took us through verse number 13. God's mercies are extended to Israel. Hosea extends mercy of love. Oh, well, it says, okay, let me see if I got that. God's mercy is extended to Israel, and Hosea extends mercy to Gomer. She is chastened out of a heart of love for her by Hosea. Their vows of love are renewed, and Gomer is restored to right fellowship with Hosea after she hits rock bottom. And that's exactly when the Jews will be restored to their Savior, is when they get at their lowest. Now, they've been low. The Jews have been hated from the very beginning. Since they became a nation, they've not found favor in the world. But yet, the greatest problem for Israel is in their future. Remember, But the last half of the book of tribulation, or the time of tribulation, is called the time of Jacob's trouble. And there's never been a time like that in this earth. And that's the time when God pours out judgment upon the world, but also judgment upon Israel. And then at the end of that chastisement period, God shows himself to Israel, and they finally recognize that he is the Messiah. See, Jews are looking for the Messiah. They believe in the Messiah, but they do not believe that Jesus was the Messiah. That's their problem, okay? Okay, so that takes us over into chapter number 3. Hosea's home is broken up because of his adulterous wife. From this, look in chapter 3. Then said the Lord unto me, Go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel. And so what he's asking Hosea to do is he's asking him to go after his adulterous wife who is living with another man. Now, evidently, she's living as a slave to another man. God instructs Hosea to go to her in love and reclaim her. So showing great forgiveness, and as God shows great forgiveness toward adulterous Israel. Hosea goes after her and pays the price of redemption for her. So look at it in chapter 3, verse 2 says, Hosea says, So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver and for an omer of barley and a half omer of barley. So according to Exodus chapter 21 and verse 32, the price of a slave was 30 pieces of silver, a common slave. Remember somebody who was bought for 30 pieces of silver? Yeah, his name was Jesus. That's that's what they thought of him. Well, what this slave owner, this man who had a live-in woman for his own pleasure, he thought of her no more than as a slave, half a slave. It was only the half price of a slave. So he sold her back to Hosea for 15 pieces of silver and a month's supply of animal food, which was barley. So very cheap purchase. Gomer, a type of Israel, is encouraged to stay by her husband Hosea, which is a type of God the Father. She was given rules to follow, and there was a probationary period of healing and proving of her faithfulness. And the consequences of Israel's rebelling and spiritual adultery is described in verse 4. And it says, verse 4, For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without the teraphim. And afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. So there's that promise that God will restore Israel back into himself in the latter days. I believe that's talking about the end of the tribulation period. The little phrase I put there, the end of this empty relationship will come to an end at the close of the tribulation, when Israel acknowledges their Messiah and is led into the 1,000-year kingdom with their king on his throne in Jerusalem. We can, now this is Siler theology, I guess. We can believe based on the typology that Hosea's home life with Gomer and their children had a happy ending. So we don't know now about Gomer and Hosea and Gomer's their life came back together. He took this adulterous wife back into himself, and they had this. But we can assume, since the story of Israel and God ends on a happy note, we could really think on that typology that this home was restored and had a happy ending. Chapter number 4, hear the word of the Lord, verse 1 says, Ye children of Israel, for the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. Wow. Boy, there's something when God has a controversy with you. That means God says, could I see you a minute, back behind the barn. Could you go back to the woodshed with me for a moment? There's a controversy he has with Israel. Remember, that's the northern kingdoms. Remember, those northern kingdoms, they had many kings, but they never had a good king. The 10 northern tribes never had a good king, and most of those kings were taken off of the throne by assassination. It was a wicked kingdom. God had a controversy with them, it says, because of their disobedience. Hosea's brokenness over his home was but a picture of brokenness over his people. Israel is guilty of having no truth, no mercy, no knowledge of God. Wow. They had corrupted themselves so much they didn't even know who God was. Now, could I just pull over aside and say, America, said to be a Christian nation, I mean, we can walk out of these doors and within 5 minutes we can knock on homes of people who know very little, if nothing, about God. It's a sad day. They were corrupt, therefore still shall the land mourn, it says, because of their corruptness. It's reflecting the laws of the Lord of sowing and reaping. Even though Israel is living in spiritual wickedness, they are not disavowed by the Lord. Look in verse 6. We're in chapter number 4. And verse number 6 says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Verse number 12, it says, my people shall ask at their stock. So even though Israel was in a rebellious state, they were still the people of God. He had not given up on them, that northern kingdom. Hosea was being used by God to send a strong message to the 2 southern tribes. In other words, the southern tribes who, by and large, they had many days of righteous living. They had their share of bad kings, but they had some kings that led them back to true worship. But the northern tribes were an example that the southern tribes of Judah could look to them, and sometimes they would envy them. Just like believers sometimes can look into the world and envy the people of the world. That's human nature. You're on your way to church and, you see people who are on the way to the beach or they're on their way to do this or that. And if we're not careful, sometimes we can become envious at the foolish. But, it's human nature. But there's no reason to be envious of those that are living in the world. Let me move you down to verse number 17. Ephraim was in that northern tribe, and it was kind of a leading city of that, a leading tribe, I should say. And it says in verse 17, Ephraim is joined to idols. Let him alone. Wow. Ephraim had led these northern tribes into idolatry and worshiping idols. And God says, just leave them alone for judgment. A judgment's going to come upon them. They'd set up idols in Gilgal, 2 places. Gilgal, if you read it there in verse number 15, it says, but though thou, Israel, play the harlot, let not Judah offend. In other words, Judah, don't live like Israel's living. Don't live like the northern tribes. And come not ye into Gilgal, neither go up into Bethaven. What was it, Gilgal and Bethaven? That's where they had set up the golden idols. That's where they had set up the golden calves to worship. Don't go there. It says, you worship in Jerusalem. They've decided to worship. It was easier to worship golden idols down in Bethel and Gilgal, or Bethaven and Gilgal. So the last chapter, very quickly, I'm running out of time. Hosea turns his attention to the rebellious people of Israel, the 10 northern tribes. And look at it in verse number 5. Hear ye this, O priests, and hearken ye house of Israel, the 10 northern tribes, and give ear, O house of the king, for judgment is toward you, because ye have been a snare on Mizpah, and a net spread upon Tabor. Now Mizpah and Tabor were 2 mountains. And as I put in the outline, as the mountains of Mount Tabor and Mount Mizpah were easily seen because they were the high peaks, and so people knew exactly where Mount Pisgah and Mount Tabor were. So the wickedness of Israel was easily seen because of their whoredoms. They could not hide their unfaithfulness unto the Lord. Hosea noted that there would come a day when Israel would come with sacrifices pretending to seek the Lord, but the Lord would see insincerity and turn them aside. So remember, God judges the heart, and He desires obedience more than sacrifice. So let me close this out. Verse number, I just read in verse number 8. Blow you the cornet in Gibeah and the trumpet in Ramah. Cry aloud at Bethaven after thee, O Benjamin. Ephraim shall be desolate in the day of rebuke. Among the tribes of Israel have I made known that which shall surely be. So Ephraim had led Israel into idol worship, and they would become an example of God's judgment upon idol worship. Because of idol worship, Ephraim's strength would be taken unawares, like a moth eats secretly at a material. And so that's exactly what happens to believers who fall into sin. Little by little by little, their strength, their spiritual strength is taken from them, till one day they find themselves spiritually anemic. All right, that's the first 5 chapters. I'll give you a quiz tomorrow, okay? Don't give me a quiz. I'll probably flunk it myself. Okay, God bless you. Thanks for being in the Sunday school hour today. Pray for our class. You know, if you see folks, we got plenty missing in our class, and a lot of our folks are watching online. Thank you for tuning in today online, and may God bless you. We soon hope to have you back among us. God bless you.